Hi there, and welcome to a book review that I will be doing. This book has been monumental in my development. I've read it twice because of how complex it gets, and it is a hard to understand book, but once you really get it, it is fruitful beyond measure. So the book that I am going to be talking about today is called King, Warrior, Magician, and Lover by Robert Moore and Douglas Gillette. Very good book. I recommend that every man should read this because it talks about civilization as of today, rather society, and how we have this word, and I don't know when you are watching this video, but we have a lot of toxic masculinity. Well, this book likes to address that that's not even masculinity. We shouldn't even call it that. It's rather boys pretending to be men, because they have never grown up. They are still in this stage of being boys in a psychological sense. They're infantile. And so this book has really helped me to understand the unconscious, and especially the archetypes that lie in the unconscious. Now, for any of those who do not understand that, check my readings as well. But first off, the archetypes, and especially, well, let's say the unconscious, that is a psychoanalytical thing, or psychoanalysis, which is a European thought of line. So most behaviorists don't really believe in this stuff and really don't understand it as well, because it's more of a spiritual somewhat thing, because it's the unconscious. We don't understand it. We probably never will, to the extent that we, have said. But the unconscious has these things, I like to believe, that are called archetypes. And I like to say these archetypes are, the best way to describe them is ideas, and rather just people that I have looked from the past and I have restored in my memory, that kind of invoke a sense of feeling into me that has me to act a certain way. So the four main archetypes that this book really discusses, it's called, again, the king, the warrior, the magician, and the lover. Now, they all fall under the king because the king is the main archetype, because he demonstrates all of these things. Again, this book is really good, and I will explain later on a couple of things that I've learned from this, as well as the personal experience that I have seen already just from implementing some of the rules that I've seen. So I will talk about the king first. The king's energy, and this is how you feel him, how you can invoke him and such, is he's calming by establishing order in the psyche over anxiety. So that just means that when you're anxious, he controls that anxious feelings. He says, listen, we're gonna figure this out. We can do this. He mediates vitality, which just means he brings about aliveness like a young boy. It's very powerful, and it's needed. That also goes in touch with the lover, because again, these are all connected, so you cannot really describe one without the other, and that's what I'm gonna do a lot. He brings out identity and purpose. So when I talk about identity, you kind of understand your strengths, is what he does. And so I took a Clifton Strength Finder test just maybe a week ago or so, and I really found out the strengths that I need to rely on in order to succeed in life, because one of my things is I'm always focusing on my weaknesses, right? And I found out that's actually a strength, because I'm restorative. I like to see what is lagging behind, and I bring it up to scale, or at least well enough, and that really actually helped me see that I have a strength in that. And that's my king energy part. It is integrity as well, so maintaining and not slipping into temptations, and that is even something that is preached in the Bible, and we have to take control of this king energy. He's kind and caring, and so as we see, again, this kind of references to Jesus, and this book likes to claim that Christianity is part of the archetypes. I don't necessarily believe that. I believe these archetypes are, in a sense, more not as spiritual, but rather identifiers. They're labels of certain feelings, and then how I can change my brain to think a certain way. But I do believe that Christianity and this, they work together. Funny story, the first time I bought this book, I got so afraid that it was going against Christianity that I actually tore it up. That was the stupidest thing I've ever done, and I felt so embarrassed and annoyed by it. So I rebought this book. This is the second book. Funny because then I read it the second time. So it's been a journey, but it's a really good book once you figure out that they coexist with each other, and rather that Christianity influenced many things in this book. He is very kind and caring. I don't know if I just said that. My bad. He compliments and appraises others, which means he's comfortable in his masculine identity. And actually, that was something I've never really been good at, was complimenting other people and giving them praise, because I was like feeling inferior, especially with Nick, my best friend. There's a lot of things I felt he was superior to me, and that was because I really didn't see my own strengths. And so now that I do, I actually can really coexist with him, and I can even tell him, hey, good job, you're doing this, because I'm comfortable in the things that I know and the things that I can create and do, and he can do his own things. And so that's just something I've wanted to talk about, because it then says he's not envious because of his security. I don't really envy Nick anymore like I used to. I really just love him for the man that he is. I'm so glad that he's his own person, and that we connect on a lot of things. We're our own individuals, but we still share so many things together. And he encourages creativity in us and others. And so I will talk about this much later when I talk about Lion Camp, because I really felt I put those all four in a combination, because I really meditate on them every day. But when we are on a group project or something, it really helps to be a leader. I mean, the king is the leader of the people. And so to give up some of the reins and to rather say, you know what, you do your thing, I'll do mine, that works really well. The next one, the warrior, he has a commitment to a higher goal. And so that's even the same thing as what the king says. And again, like I said, they all tie in together. You cannot really talk about one without the other. So his commitment to his higher goal is the most important thing. So I even find that is when I'm working for God, when I am following him, that is a higher goal that is beyond me. I'm just a single person. God is much higher. And so that's something that I find identity in a lot of the times as well. He is very aggressive as well in his nature. He leaps forward into action. When I find a problem, there's a lot of the times that I actually I enjoy it. I like to solve problems. It's fun because I get to test myself. I get to be aggressive and show myself off. He is also, I don't know what I wrote. Discerning and alert, which means he makes choices. So I've learned that I used to be a very circuitous thinker. I would just think about the same problem, and then I'd have an answer and I wouldn't act on it. And so I was like, oh, blah, 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 blah. I just kept thinking of nothing. But now I finally found when I find the answer, that's what deep thinking is. You think about it very long and hard, you find the answer, and then boom, you act on it. That's what the warrior mainly does, is he acts on these things. He is conventional and moral until he can't win. I actually really have noticed that one, because I am very moral and conventional when things happen, and I like to, because it is something that's part of my identity. But when it does come to the time where it is almost life or death, as my grandpa once said, you do whatever it takes to win in a fight if someone's trying to kill you. You don't have any morals then, and my part on that is you bite their ear off, man. You do Mike Tyson stuff like that. Like, you need to want to kill them. There's no more morals set there, because that is life or death. Life is short and fragile, so be meaningful. That is another thing, is to act. I do that every single morning. I want to do something because I know life is short, so every single action I do, I take very seriously. One of the things I learned is don't take it personally, but take it very seriously. Anything that somebody talks to you about, or that you're in a situation. Because, again, life is short. You want to bring meaning into it with your higher goal. And again, even that's part of the lover, is make it meaningful. Enjoy it. Express it and everything. He doesn't think too much. Again, I was talking about that circuitous thinking, is think hard enough, on it, and then act. Don't do this thinking that just goes around and around and then never comes to a conclusion. Also, he is a master. He trains and he masters his things. mind, body, I would even say soul. You try to perfect those. I mean, you never will, but the pursuit of it. I mean, I try to harden my mind and make it more durable psychologically every day. I try to make my body stronger as well, because it's aesthetically pleasing to me, and as well, it's nice to be strong, to help others and to do these things. And then again, the soul, my connection to God, I need to strengthen it by doing things for Him and just becoming a master at certain talents. That's what will make you successful. Again, relying on your own strengths. He is, wow, I do not know what I wrote. Unconquerable spiritually and has courage. That's another one. My spirit has never really been broken. It hurts, and it hurts me. Like, my emotions will batter me down, but there's a lot of times it's just I get back up. That's what life is. Especially, I love the story of David Goggins. That's just his life, is just getting back up. And he talked about him in Rocky, when it's Apollo Creed versus Rocky. The look on Apollo's face when Creed gets back up, he's just disappointed. I think that's what life kind of sees. I think that's what Satan sees, is when you fail and you get back up, he's just, I thought that I put this boy down, and it's just like, that's the warrior in us. That's that fighter, the eye of the tiger, if I will. But in a sense, this is a negative thing, but it is almost in a sense a good thing. It's just, how do you use it? He's emotionally distant in his full state. That's something that I wanted to talk about in a second, but again, that's a really important one, and it's actually really good if you can master that skill of being emotionally distant in certain times. So the next person that I will talk about is the magician. So the magician is basically your ego. It's the person who watches things, like I experience life. I actually wrote about that recently in the notes, if you ever look at it. And again, I need to put dates on those things, but I basically said that the ego doesn't live life, it observes it internally and externally. That's one thing, is and that's what I'll talk about the lover in a second, is I'm watching things constantly. I'm seeing how they interact, and then I'm seeing how I interact with them internally. And that's just one of the things that the magician does. He's aware and insightful. Again, he's just, I can see the patterns and things, and then I can really understand what's going on around me and read the room, like, not everyone can do that. And that's why in any of these, I really identify, well, actually, I can't even say that anymore. I really didn't, the only one I didn't really identify with was the king, and I'll get to that again, like I talked about, not really being confident in myself, but, the next thing is he knows knowledge, and I get it, like I get knowledge and I see that it's apparent immediately. Like, I just see it, and I'm like, I want that knowledge. One of the things, again, on that Clifton Strength Finder, it was restorative, input, responsible, learner, and analytical. And so input and learner are basically almost the same thing, but learner is to love the passion of going after knowledge. Input is storing that knowledge for a later purpose. And so that's just one thing that I really liked about it, is that I'm looking for that knowledge, I find it, I apply it to my life, and then I see how it works, like this book, It also helps order chaos as well. Like I said, that is something that the king does as well, but it's like, I can see what's going on internally or externally, and then the king decides what is to happen, and then he tells the warrior what to do. You see that line right there, right? And that's even to say, and I'll give a sneak peek, the lover feels it, the magician sees it, the magician tells it to the king, and the king will dictate what to do to the warrior. And so that's a cool thing, but again, thoughtful and reflective, that's another thing. I'm constantly thinking about the things that I've done and seeing, was it good, was it bad, and how can I improve, and what did I, how did it turn out all around? And so that's just another thing. Again, I really, I guess, didn't write as much as I thought I would on the magician, but just basically he understands also the unknown knowledge. things that aren't really known to people all the time. Like a lot of this knowledge that I'm reading right now, and you tell anybody, I mean, and I'll talk about that at Lion Camp, but when I talk to people, that was awesome. And finally, the lover. The lover is vivid, alive, and passionate. He feels life. He's the one experiencing it. Again, like I said, the magician sees it. He doesn't live life. He watches it, experiences it, reports. The lover feels it. The sense of meaning comes from him. And that's the thing is, again, you as a warrior dedicate yourself to a higher goal, and you feel that meaning. That's what that dedication to, that meaningfulness really is, to satisfy the hungers of life. It's very emotional. I respond to things internally. That's what the lover does, is I feel things, I get hurt, I get sad, and it's just like, again, what do I do about that? Well, I observe why, and then I dictate what to do. It's shameless. There's a lot of times that sometimes, and not all these things are good. Again, like the lover, he is the one that is the most feeling. All the other three are really dispassionate, but rather that's what the lover does, is give them that passion. But it's also, he needs limits. He's shameless. There's a lot of times, I will commit adultery with, my girlfriend. And, I regret it. Actually, I've had a really hard night tonight, but that's besides the point, really. And sometimes I feel shameless. I'm like, what's the problem? It feels great. I love it. This is like beautiful. It's like, but there's boundaries that need to be placed. There's not like, there's a lot of bad things. And again, that's not what God wants. And that's what I need to set a boundary for myself. He's united with the world. That's another, again, good and bad thing. I love to go outside and see nature. Oh my goodness. I just, my friends, they make fun of me because I'm like, man, look at that tree. It's so beautiful. But it's like, it is. Like, it is beautiful. I love my dogs. Like some people, they're not too crazy about pets, but I really love my dogs. They're just so beautiful, and it's just, I feel close, and that's the thing, being close with the fire of the unconsciousness. Like, I feel all the things, like especially dreams. That's the lover. You feel all these things that, the unconscious is telling you, because that's a lot of these archetypes, you can see them in your dreams, the ones that you're lacking and the ones that you're feeling really strongly. Another cool thing, he sees things aesthetically. Life is art, almost, in this sense. I do that a lot. Like, I love to write poetry about art. The world. I find it so beautiful, and it's just amazing to me, and I make my body aesthetic when I'm in the mirror flexing and everything. It's a beautiful art. Very spiritual. Again, that's also what allows me to connect with the Lord my God, is I can feel him. I'm spiritual. Like, I'm really in touch with my soul when I try, and I'm not being away from God. He's sensitive and finds joy. What about page 124? I'm actually going to go see what that is real quick. Oh, it says, while feeling the pain and poignancy of the world, he feels great joy as well. He feels joy and delight in the sensory experiences of life. He may know, for example, the joy of opening a cigar humidor and smelling the exotic aromas of tobaccos. He may also be sensitive to music. He may feel exquisitely the eerie thrumming of the Indian sitar, the swelling of a great symphony, or the aesthetic thunk of Arab clay drum. Even writing can be a sensuous experience for him. And it also even talks about, he feels pain. It's really, you have to feel all these things, and that's why I say when I feel pain, and I'll talk about that in a second, I embraced it because it's part of experience, and I'm glad that I can feel all of it, even if it's excruciating, Emotional appreciation. Just again, being happy about the emotions that I have and the feelings that I have. It's sensitive to pain as well, like I just said. And creative. I'm always, I love to, again, read. I love to write, I love to draw, I like to write poems. I have all these things I like to do, and I love to create. I want to learn how to play the guitar so I can create music. I want to learn the piano as well. Like, there's all of these things I want to do because I could create, you know, joy. I mean, that's one of the main things that you can do is we consume and we create when you really break it down, you know? And both are needed, but we lack on the creative part sometimes. And so that's just something I've always found really nice. And so in the conclusion, it even talks about certain things that you can do to really call upon these archetypes. And so I will talk about them real fast. So the first one is the active imagination dialogue. Sometimes I just sit there and I think about the archetypes, and I want to hear if I say anything in my head. You know, if I say, well, I'm feeling like this, and I can kind of tell, I'm like, yeah, that's the king talking, or that's the lover in me talking, you know, like, it's cool. And so then you can find out who's kind of feeling oppressed or suppressed, really, and, you know, who has too much control. And you can really then dictate what you need to do, you know, be more sensuous, you know, with the lover, or be more authoritarian and do what you need to do with the warrior, you know. And so you can feel them then. The next one would be invocation, which is then, you know, I just think about the images of, you know, men who I want to act like. So Julius Caesar, I'm like, I need to go conquer, I need to go do these things. I think about, you know, David, you know, when he kills the giant, and I'm like, I can tackle anything in life, you know. And David, actually, I wrote in my notes, you can see that he's the perfect male like, he embodies all 4 archetypes when you look at it. You know, he's a lover, a warrior, magician, and a king. Next thing is admiring men, and especially, you know, like, I admire a lot of men that actually, I have a tab, you can look at that again. People I look up to, you know, from literature, anime, movies, TV shows, such, even men in real life. I look up to George Washington, you know, and you look at all their flaws, but you also realize the greatness that they achieved in life. And it's also good to, look at men who are still alive today that you actually have a good relationship. I have a man named Brian Garrison who I look up to a lot because he's very, you know, good in his spirit. He's like he's a holy, or, you know, he's a man of God. He was a businessman, you know, as a banker, and he was good at his job, you know. And so I can see that he was a magician in that sense of he knew his trade, and he was also able to do things that he needed to do. And so I look up to him like that. And then the next thing is acting as if, you know, like, certain things will happen in life, or things, you know, you have to act as if. I mean, the examples that are given that I like was, on the stage, you act kingly, even if you've just been fired from your job and your wife has left you. The show must go on. You know, pretty soon, believe it or not, you'll start to feel like a king. But if you need to access the, you know, lover more, go out and look at sunsets, you know, like, just, even if you don't like them, I love them personally, but go out and look at them, you know, go out and look at something and admire it, you know, act like you do, and eventually you will. There's an old Asian, I'm sorry, I don't know the thing off the top of my head, but it's an Asian thing that talks about, you know, a man lived in a mask, and he put that mask on his face, and eventually, when he took it off after a couple of years, his face was that way in shape of the mask. And it's like, that's what we do, is when we act a certain way, we eventually become that certain thing. That's why habits are really important, good or bad, you know. You know, even if the warrior, you're gonna have to get up, stop watching television, go work out, go do things, you know, move around, starts an action. And then again, the magician, you need to really focus on wisdom. You know, if somebody comes to you for help, show them wisdom, and, you know, almost like a soothsayer or something like that. And that's basically all I have to read from the book. I might use it as some tools to help me understand certain things, but really good stuff. I just had a couple of things in my little notebook that I wanted to talk about real fast as well. But I wanted to say that at Lion Camp, it was really incredible because I was called the leader a lot of the times. Like, people were like, oh, ran for president. I was almost like a little superstar in a sense. It was like awesome. it's like, because I was really invoking the king within me, you know. And then even at certain times, like, here, I'll actually run through each and every single one of them. I felt the lover when I talked to people. I was so passionate about what I talked about, you know, and I gave so much, you know, love. And I would point out like the beauty of the sunset and the trees. And, you know, I would talk about the things I've written and the things that I've read. And people would be, you know, almost starstruck. You know, they were like, wow, that's incredible, you know. I would sit there and I would even, I had a group of like 5 to 8 people sometimes, you know, just sitting there listening to me talk and talk about things. You know, I was like, well, I don't know why y'all listen to me. They would ask questions because I was almost, like I said, like I was like a magician. I could then tell them, and, you know, I could answer their questions, you know, and I would talk on about philosophy and psychology. And people were so interested because, like, they're like, you're so peaceful, Grant. I'm like, yeah, I am peaceful because I'm very unified in myself and with all of the archetypes that I've talked about recently. You know, I've just, you know, like I have control over my emotions, and I'm very mature now, more than I used to be. I used to be very irrational and angry, and, you know, I let my emotions control me, really, and my thoughts were too much. But now I've gotten over that. And so, like I said, it was really nice to see people like think of me as a leader, you know. And it's like, and then even then when I was a leader, I complimented them about their creative abilities, and I was able to let them take over certain times when we were doing our sing practice for a musical. That's what it was called, Sing. You know, there's a man named, or there's a boy, I don't really know what to say more, you know, but a friend of mine named Javier, and he knew all this choreographed stuff. And so I said, you know what, I'm gonna let you handle that. I maybe did 25% of the thing, but then I said, you know what, the other 25%, because the girls did their own thing, but he helped them out. So really, the other 75% of it, I said, Javier, you got it. You know, you're very well equipped for this, and I'm gonna trust you that you can, you know, give us a good show. And so, you know, I gave him that, and he took it really well, and he gave us a great performance, and, you know, we bonded over that. And he's like, man, like, I really appreciated that you trusted me. And I was like, of course, you know, like, this is something your strength is in, you know, and I want you to see it. I want you to see that. And I was the king in me saying, you know, I want to invoke that out of you. I want to, you know, I want that liveliness that we were talking about, you know. And then even the warrior, you know, I would stand up and I would have to say, hey, you know, guys, like, we need to focus on what we're doing. Like, we're doing so good, you know. And I've even been reading this book called Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Perfect book on how to talk to men and women separately, and there's different ways of how they take things, you know. So in a sense, it's really awesome. I've been using it because even my sister and mom, you know, commented on how much better I've been at communicating. So I'm really happy that I've been able to grow in that sense. But I digress. Again, I've seen that at Baylor, at my line camp. People were almost flocking to me because they wanted to get to know me, because I just, you know, I was really confident in myself, and I showed love to them. You know, I gave them wisdom. I led them, and I acted, you know, like I included all of those into my thing. And so it was really amazing to do. I wanted to talk about a couple of weeks ago. I actually busted my lip. I don't know if it's still there. There's a little scar right there, actually, because it cut right through. But I was playing basketball, and a guy elbowed me, and I bit through. And I was like, when blood happens, when I get hurt, it's really when I get hurt, I get really anxious, right? Because it's my conditioned response to a conditioned stimulus that's called CBT therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy. And so what I did was, I accessed the warrior, because I was getting very emotional. That's my lover. It's like, oh, like I feel a lot like I'm getting, like, this is pain, this hurts. Like I'm like, you know, I'm in it, right? And it's like, but I disassociated from my feelings of anxiety and stress. And what I did was I almost talked to myself in the second person. I said, and this is what the samurai used to do. They said, a man is in pain. He has busted his lip. What would be the best action for this man to do? Because thinking third person is a little differently, like you still notice it's you, so it's not the same. But I'm like looking, and like I point out a different guy in the room. Like I'm looking at this guy, you know, whatever, brown hair or something. And I'm like, what would this guy do? You know, his lip is busted. How is he gonna fix this? You know, oh, it's not too bad. The bleeding's already stopped for him. And, you know, I'm basically talking about myself, but I can put it on someone else, which has allowed me to cognitively disassociate and figure out my problem. So it was really awesome to do that. And I called it the disassociation of pain. And basically, also, while I was in, Tampa Bay, Florida for my senior trip, we went to a amusement park, and they had roller coasters. I am afraid of roller coasters, actually, and afraid of heights. But when I went on these roller coasters, I disassociated. Sorry, I'm about to yawn. I disassociated from my fears, actually. I just kind of was like, I trust that this will be all right. You know, and I became very detached, which the best word to say. And like I said, all three of those archetypes, king, warrior, and magician, are detachable. You know, they're detached from the emotional side, because that's what the lover really inhibits, because they have boundaries, very strict boundaries, you know, like, and that's something that I used. Is I was like, I need to take action. I'm going to do something. And so what I learned was I've been taking action. I don't let anxiety overcome. And really what I learned was when anxiety comes, you almost know that's the time to step out and do something. That's what I did at Baylor. Is I was anxious when someone would ask a question, like, you know, a presenter, but I would stand up and I would talk about what I felt and what I thought about, because I know I'm confident in myself. I know that I'm a pretty smart guy, like, and I've had enough experience to talk. And so what I really say, it's not really wrong. And even if I did get something wrong, we talked about, a speaker talked about a question he asked, did anyone take Latin? I rose my hand. He said, what does vocare mean? I said, to speak. And he was like, well, no, close. It's to call out. I knew that, and I felt stupid for 1 second. And I was like, well, you know, as I say, shit happens. That's what I say all the time. But that was really cool. Like I said, I just disassociated really from my feelings, got the job done almost. And I basically, when I got up at the top of the elevator top of the roller coaster, and it stopped, I kind of just felt the breeze and everything. And I kind of just admired the beauty of nature. And I was just like, this is nice, you know? And I felt the fear. I said, well, there's nothing I could do about it. And as I've actually put in my notes that I look at every single day, yeah, you label the fear, or the emotion that you're feeling, then you accept that it's there, and you just move on. You keep going, you know? Like, that's just all I gotta say about that. Again, this book, monumental. Every boy and man, you know, but really boys, should read this. If they have the IQ and ability to do so, because it's really impactful for developing young men. And I think really then fathers should read this to develop this into their son, and maybe unknowingly do so while the son doesn't know. But thank you for listening. I know this is actually a really long video, and I hope it doesn't take up too much data, but I normally don't do these things, but I really wanted to get this done. So thank you for listening. I've hoped you gained something from this, and I'm very happy about it.